Hey everyone, welcome back to Pro-Life University. Joe Kral, President of the Society of St. Sebastian, and hey, as always, we're here to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the pro-life issues that we're facing. And hey, guess what? I'm sure most of you have already figured out the legislative sessions for all the various states out there. Many of them are in session; they're in full swing. And today I'm going to talk about two particular bills that we really need to look at, and we really need to have more pro-life voices be heard on these particular bills. One bill is in Colorado. It is Colorado House Bill 20-1158. And again, this particular bill we have concerns about. It is an IVF bill, just to let you all know. And it certainly mandates, if the bill were to be enacted, it would mandate insurance coverage for those who are seeking in vitro fertilization. Now, let me first and step back here real quick, because again, one of the things that I have to do rather frequently, and it's kind of unfortunate, is go back and explain a little bit about IVF. Now, I'm not going to get into so much the sexual ethics, the theology of the body, so to speak, or the philosophy of, or rather the ethics of sex itself. But suffice it to say, one of the things that we know scientifically, without a shadow of a doubt, is that in vitro fertilization creates human life. It creates human embryos. And this is a scientific fact. That life is at its most vulnerable stages, and this life is outside of the room, hence in vitro. Right? The idea, because it's literally in a petri dish, what we have here is a situation in which, obviously IVF technicians, take the human egg, take the human sperm, combine them, and generate a human embryo. And so at this moment of conception, this moment of fertilization, we have life. This is a scientific fact. In fact, there's just a recent study that's come out. I've seen it on Life News. I've seen it on other various sites as well, secular press and so forth. And that is 95% of biologists agree that life begins at fertilization. That's intriguing, right? So the vast majority of biologists, scientists out there that study biology agree that life is at fertilization. It doesn't matter if it's a puppy. It doesn't matter if it's a human being. The simple fact of the matter is that life begins at the moment of fertilization. And so it's at this point that we argue as consistent pro-lifers that when you have that human embryonic child at that moment of fertilization, you have a unique individual member, a new member of the species Homo sapiens. And it's because of this, because we know that this embryonic child is not going to develop into some sort of other animal, such as a cat or a dog or a duck or whatever. It's going to develop into a human being because it's genetically human and it has a human nature. And this is radically important here, vitally important here. We believe that since this is a human being and it has a human nature, ethically speaking, this human being deserves protection, and that this human being has rights, and those rights ought to be protected, most notably the right to life. And so it doesn't matter if the child is created through in vitro fertilization or through natural sexual processes. The simple fact is you have a unique individual member of the species Homo sapiens, and that being, that child, deserves protection and deserves respect, regardless of where it is geographically speaking. So that's the important thing to know. And so this is why we argue that many of the bills that are going around in the various states that liberalize the laws on in vitro fertilization are horribly wrong, because what the IVF industry does, and again, I don't have a lot of time to get into the specifics of it. There's certainly a lot of papers at the Society of St. Sebastian website. You can go to our index and look much of the research up over there. But the simple fact is that the IVF industry creates many embryonic children after they've harvested the human oocytes, the human egg cells. And they create many embryonic children. In fact, there's so many, we now, literally guesstimate, there's been articles about this, that approximately 1 million children are in frozen storage as we speak. Embryonic children in frozen storage. That's a huge number, a big number. And we don't know. It may even be much, much more. There's no reporting requirements within the state to dictate exactly what this number is. So it may be even a lot more than what it is. But we also know that the in vitro fertilization industry is also keen on discarding embryos. And discarding is just another way of saying that they kill the embryo or destroy the embryo. Basically, what happens is if a child is seen as genetically unfit, doesn't kind of make the grade, is the wrong sex, what have you, the child is then discarded. And so this creates a big fear in, for example, in Colorado, because in many ways we're incentivizing, we're encouraging people, if this law were to pass, that they could use their insurance in order to access in vitro fertilization. And again, this is a problem, because what is the in vitro fertilization industry going to do? Well, it's going to create more embryos, and those extra embryos that weren't deemed fit for whatever particular reason will be discarded. Well, that's a violation of the right to life. And simply put, it is literally up to us as pro-lifers, ethically speaking, to go out and do something about it. So I'm certainly encouraging the many pro-life groups. In fact, I'm working with Debbie Chavez of Colorado Family Action to help her oppose this particular bill as well. So if you're out there in Colorado and you're watching this, please, do something. Let your senator now, because now it's in the state Senate, let your senator know that you're opposed to this bill as well. Now, one of the other interesting things that we talk about when we talk about this particular bill, the Colorado bill, HB 20-1158, is that in many ways it can also has the effect, or will have the effect, of having people pay into literally pay their premiums into a system that they really don't know about what's going on. So, the simple fact is people, and when they're presented with changes within their insurance coverage, and they're wondering why insurance is covering their insurance coverage is going up. One of the things to note here is that the language that's more likely going to be used to dictate as to why the insurance is going up, why the premium is going up, is not going to be some simple, plain language that most people are going to understand and go, oh, well, no, I don't want that going to that. It's going to be language that is meant to be a little bit deceptive. And again, we see this sort of language within the bill itself. So in many ways, I'm not surprised by this. So unfortunately, it also seems that many residents of Colorado, if this bill were to pass, will be paying into a system or paying premiums for their insurance coverage that they have no clue that it's going to be going to cover, a procedure and an industry that's ripe with literally human rights abuses. Obviously discarding and destroying embryos and freezing these embryonic children as well. So major problems in Colorado. And again, I encourage you to contact your state senator in Colorado if you're watching this video. And please let him or her know that you're opposed to this bill, HB 20-1158. All right. The next bill I want to briefly talk about is in Utah, and that's Utah House Bill 214. This bill, in many ways, it doesn't even really hide itself. In many ways, this is a eugenics-based bill. It's quite scary. In fact, what it proposes to do is to allow Medicaid recipients, so, Medicaid being state funded, right, to help people who are not as financially stable as some other families. So, basically the state insurance, if you will. It would mandate that Medicaid provide for those couples that, excuse me, that suffer from a genetic disorder or disease of their own. So, someone has cystic fibrosis or some other disease that is actually listed within the bill. They could have Medicaid pay for IVF for them. Now, what does this mean? Now, the bill is particularly nefarious because these people that go through this process are looking to have a child that doesn't have the same genetic condition as they do. And so basically, what this translates to is a form of eugenics. So those embryos that are flagged, if you will, as having the bad gene that the parents have will be destroyed. Again, this is a form of eugenics. In many ways, I know a lot of people try to brush this up and say, "Oh my goodness, well, we're trying to be compassionate. We don't want these, we don't want the children to suffer. We don't want the parents to suffer. It's just better to kill them." Well, that's a basic utilitarian argument, and again, it shows in many ways a lack of logical consistency, because if we can do this at the earliest stages, what's preventing us to do it at later stages? We already know, for example, when it comes to assisted suicide, that assisted suicide laws typically target not just the elderly, but the disabled. And again, here we see this again, this just horrible, I guess you could say, lack of respect for human life. And it becomes kind of this quality of life. Well, if this person is going to have this genetic disorder, their quality of life is not going to be very great. Well, that's wrong thinking. Just simply put, no one knows what that person will be going through and so forth. That person might accomplish great and wonderful things. It might be one of the happiest people that you would ever know, as a matter of fact. So making these qualifications, if you will, on the quality of life is very, very dangerous. And again, here, as I see it, it's blatantly a eugenics bill, highly problematic. And again, this has passed the House, and interestingly enough, again, not much opposition there. But I'm certainly talking to the folks at Pro-Life Utah to obviously get this worked out, fixed up, and get senators to oppose this as well. Again, when it comes to in vitro fertilization, we've got to firmly understand this is an industry that creates life and routinely destroys life because it doesn't meet certain criteria of either the technicians or maybe even the parents. The simple fact is no one has a right to a child. That is a vast misunderstanding of what a right is. A right implies duties. And so for example, if we talk about the right to life, we're talking about the duty of others to let innocent lives live. That's a moral duty. We don't have any duty to go out and kill innocent life, right? We have a duty to protect innocent life. And so, that's where we derive our right to life from. This idea that there's a right to a child implies that somehow we have a duty to provide a child or gamete cells, like sperm or egg cells, to these people that want kids. And that's just simply not the case. Furthermore, they think they have a right to the perfect child. Well, that's dangerous thinking as well, as we've just previously discussed. Now, while I think all of us would agree that infertility is indeed a hard thing for any couple to have to go through, a gut-wrenching thing that a couple will have to go through, the simple fact is we need to look for life-affirming alternatives that can help this couple. The simple fact is IVF is simply not that. It is ripe with human rights abuses. It is clear for the fact that they essentially practice eugenics. And two, even beyond the eugenics argument, that they have very little respect for, the very early stage human person. And so I urge you all to inform yourselves a little bit more on this particular subject. Get to know it more. I'm sure we'll have a few more conversations throughout the various legislative sessions that the states are having, because I'm sure more bills will pop up. And we'll talk about the various bills. We've been talking about defunding Planned Parenthood, Born Alive Infants Protection Acts, and so forth. And we'll certainly talk about other legislation as well. But, again, inform yourself, become a better pro-lifer. Help inform your friends about the IVF issue as well, because that's certainly very, very important, really important, as a matter of fact. So please go out there and do that. Again, I hope you enjoyed this session of Pro-Life University. Give us a big thumbs up if you like this video. Don't hesitate to subscribe to our channel. And hey guys, if you can ever help us out with a tax-deductible donation, go hit us up at societyofsaint.org, excuse me. And hit the donation button or the donate button, and help us out a little bit. We appreciate everything that you do to help the cause of life, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. God bless.